Heartiest felicitations on the eve of the Republic Day, the 76th Republic Day, as Indian Republic turns 75 years old tomorrow. We were constituted and declared as a sovereign democratic republic on 26th of January 1950, and then, of course, the two words secular and socialist were added subsequently into the preamble. Although those credentials were a part and parcel of the Indian Constitution as originally approved and continue to be so, and I do personally believe that these are basic and fundamental features of the Indian Constitution. So, on the eve of the Republic Day tomorrow, heartiest felicitations to fellow citizens of India. The idea of this small impromptu talk is to recapitulate what has happened in past 1 year and then to look forward as to what we expect in the coming year of the Republic. A lot actually has happened, and I would try my best within the next 7 to 10 minutes to wrap up the major important events. First and foremost, I would like to say that although it happened on 22nd of January of 2024, that is before the previous Republic Day, I think the Ram Mandir Pran Pratishtha was something which was once in a lifetime opportunity and happened after centuries. Irrespective of the faith, whether you belong to Hindu, Sanatan, everyone rejoiced on the reopening of the Ram Mandir at Ayodhya. And Prime Minister himself forming the ceremonial rituals as per the Shastras. So it was really, I think, the most important event within the past 1 year from the Republic Day, I think, has been the Ram Mandir Pran Pratishtha. And I take the poetic license of putting it within 1 year of this Republic Day. People would like to say that you lost Ayodhya and so on in Lok Sabha, but those are subsequent matters. Elections come and go, people win and lose. But something which had been there, which is so dear to the beliefs of virtually every Indian, north, south, east, west, that there should not be an impressive Bhavya Imarat na ho mandir ki wahan. So that, of course, happened, and we are lucky to see the Ram Mandir at the Ram Janam Bhoomi at the very site dedicated to Lord Ram. The second most important event which I would like to touch upon was the Lok Sabha elections. Very, very fiercely contested, long drawn elections, many phases. And of course, in the peak of the summer. But in the whole chant of 400 par, ultimately the Modi 3 government settled at less than the midway mark as far as BJP is concerned and formed the government and a coalition government thanks to support of allies like Chandrababu Naidu and Nitish Kumar. So I think in many ways, although BJP remains a dominant partner and there is no leader either within or outside the BJP equivalent in stature to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, yet it is quite clear that this was a kind of a coalition government that we are going to run, and especially when constitutional amendments are going to be required, where you require, even in Rajya Sabha, two-thirds of the members present in voting. So we are in an era where we will increasingly have to see give and take and taking the opposition along and even your alliance partners in important decisions where they may have their own agenda specific to their states of Andhra Pradesh and Bihar. So Modi 3 government, pretty much a coalition government and nowhere close to the rhetoric and the chants of 400 par. Coming to legislation and more particularly constitutional amendments, I would like to say that the women reservation bill, which had been debated and discussed, and people thought it was a rhetoric because no one wanted the women representation up to 30% in parliament and state Vidhan Sabhas. So that is a reality, and ultimately people from all across the political spectrum joined. It's a different thing that it will be made effective after the next Lok Sabha election, but definitely it is a part of the statute book, and remaining are only formalities to be completed as to how and which constituencies are going to be reserved for women. I think this is the single most important women empowerment tool which we have seen after the Panchayati Raj institutions also reserved these seats. And we've seen, at least I personally have seen at the Gram Panchayat level, at the Panchayat Samiti, Zilla Parishad, Municipal Council, Corporation level, that women and SC women who were not willing to step up their houses, were not willing to speak, after they got exposed to the dynamics of power, were some of the most articulate members. So do not think that this is going to be cosmetic. Do not think it's going to be someone's wife, widow, or sister or mother. This is going to really empower women. And I am sure if the political parties are sensitive and really interested in empowering women, they would be giving seats to women leaders who are leaders in their own right. So that is one. And then, of course, is something which is a work in progress: one nation, one country, and one election type of a thing. No, this is something which in theory appeals to everyone, that you cannot have a series of elections. Sometimes an election in the state is happening, then in the Lok Sabha is happening, especially like in the state of Punjab, where the two are staggered by 2.5 years. Everyone is constantly in an election mode. So those constitutional amendment bills have been introduced. But mind you, it is not a simple task. I have written on the logistics also as to what happens if the Lok Sabha cracks down, and it has happened. We've had elections in 1996, 1998, 1999. So a fragile Lok Sabha where the no single party is able to cobble up support is not an unknown phenomenon. But more importantly, whether it would be able to sail through the two houses of parliament, more particularly Rajya Sabha, where a constitutional amendment does require a majority of two-thirds of the member president voting. That is the constitutional requirement. But in any case, a progress made beyond former President Kovind's report. You are not talking in terms of one nation, one election. At least it is on the national agenda. Then, of course, there is this increasing chant or murmurs which are getting louder in form of, I wouldn't say protests, but they're becoming noisier, is all this talk about middle class, saying that, the going is tough. You've got high GST rates. And although everyone from the poorest to the richest is paying GST because you purchase items and therefore GST is charged on those purchases, even a poor man pays. You can't say, there are only so many taxpayers. But what is really hurting the middle class now is that while the inflation is not under check, the job opportunities are not increasing, the middle class increasingly feels that in a country of 140 crores, you have only 6 crore income tax filers. And data suggests that only 2 crores are actually paying income tax. Remaining 4 crores are merely filing income tax returns to claim refunds of tax which was deducted at source in terms of TDS, etc. So if there are just 2 crore independent income tax pays, then they would expect a better deal in terms of infrastructure, in terms of tolls not being charged on the highways, instead no long waiting queues at railways, railway accidents not happening. And that type of scenario is not, being addressed in the eyes of the middle class. If you follow Twitter, I find these noises getting louder and louder, and none other than Shekhar Gupta, who, of course, one of the leading journalists, has written on his portal print.in that all the middle class is, Modi Bhakt. He starts with this premise. He says they are getting not a raw deal, but not a very good deal, and they expect much more. Of course, the BJP, immediately through Amit Malviya has come out and resoundingly repudiated this claim to say that here you are, this is what Modi Sahab has done for the middle class, and whole list of ideas and whole list of schemes and achievements and statistics. But fact remains that the middle class feels that, especially the salaried class, that they are the only ones who are being taxed, and they are bearing the burden of the 6 lakh crore overall subsidies, which are part and parcel of the union budget, 2 crore people. So effectively, every income tax pay is shelling out 3 lakh rupees on an average to fund the various welfare schemes, whether it is farmer subsidy, fertilizer subsidy, Awas Yojanas, and so on, all put together, and the ambitious program under the Food Security Act of feeding 80 crore families, those are at the end of the day being funded by these income tax pays. And I at least find that increasingly, even chartered accountants and people who are dealing with the financial sector are increasingly talking about it. And I do honestly hope that when this budget comes within days after the Republic Day, the Honorable Finance Minister will address these issues, which are important, and especially when we are talking in terms of the new income tax code, that there would be something, not just changes, not just cosmetic changes, not just renumbering of the sections, like in case of the Bharat Nyaya Sanhita and so on, but something really simple and something which gives the middle class that this is the government, the Modi government, which cares for the people who are earning their daily bread by the sweat of their brow. So, middle class murmurs are getting louder, and it is our duty to bring it to the notice of the central government and the various state governments that you have to address the aspirations of this educated class who are not going to be carried out and carried away by mere advertisements and rhetoric. They want something substantial percolating to them as a kind of reciprocal measure for what they are contributing to the state exchequer. Coming to the international arena, I think India has done admirable. It is not a simple world. There are, polars, there are disparities, there are people who are permanent enemies, and within those you have to strike a balance. So, for instance, Russia is at war with Ukraine, and Prime Minister Modi has tried to maintain a balance between the two, visiting both of them. Russia, of course, is very important, and if you see the type of oil imports that India has, and Russia has been accommodating us by accepting the payment for Russian oil in terms of Indian rupees. So my latest figures may be off the mark by a percentage here or there, but between 30 and 35% of India's crude oil is coming from Russia. And at the same time, we are also with the West, and Prime Minister Modi has visited Ukraine and personally met President Zelensky. Similarly, we are an active member of BRICS, which contains Russia and China as well. They're talking in terms of their own BRICS currency, which President Trump has strongly objected to and has said in so many words that should you go in for this currency, then please expect huge tariffs if you want to enter the American market. And to contain China, on the naval side at least, India is a part of, it's not a military alliance squad, but it is definitely a cooperation. You're conducting joint military naval exercises in the Indian Ocean and in the Pacific Ocean and the South China Sea. India, Australia, Japan, and of course, United States of America. So, kind of containing the expansionist ambitions of China into the Indian Ocean and also to Southeast Asia and Japan. So, India is there also. There has also been a kind of a thaw so far as China is concerned. We call it disengagement. Opposition parties and leaders and disgruntled leaders like Subramanian Swamy, have their own views on this, that China has intruded and now they're staying put, so on and so forth. But overall, there has been a thaw, which is really good because you cannot be kind of in a state where you are on verge of a, I wouldn't say a war, but border skirmishes between your armed forces. So I think we have been able to diffuse that situation, and particularly India's relationship with Sri Lanka and Maldives. They've got the new leaders, new elections. They have tried to mend fences, and India, as the big brother in the neighborhood, I think has been accommodating. Canada has been a contentious partner, especially under the leadership of Prime Minister Trudeau. Thankfully, he's out or on the way out. And things like Khalistan referendum there and the killing of Niger, the self-styled Khalistan ideologue, and of course the four youth who were arrested were all Sikh youth of Indian origin. Be that as it may, this type of kind of cantankerous relationship between a country like Canada and country like India, and especially from perspective Punjab, a lot of Punjabi people as students and so on. So that has also been a kind of a sore point. And Canada, of course, has had its own sets of problems. But I'm sure that this would be something which we flag here, but would be on the agenda to mend as we step into the next year of the Republic, the 76th year of the Republic, better relations with Canada. You cannot talk in terms of relations and international relations and foreign policy without mentioning the United States of America, and especially when you got a very, very vocal president, and in his previous avatar, which lasted ended 4 years ago, so that would have been 2012 to 2016, 2016 to 2020. So within those 4 years, all coterminous with Prime Minister Modi's tenure, my friend, and Ab Ki Baar, Trump Sarkar, we all remember those slogans. And now, of course, President Trump is back and back with a bang, coming out with executive orders on the very first day, especially the one relating to, ending the right of American citizenship by sheer birth, even if the parents are illegally into the territory of the United States of America. So that would have impacted a lot of Indian passport holders on H1B1 visa and so on, who are not having American passports or green card. Thankfully, it has been stayed. There's long litigation. Let's see how it pans out. But more importantly is my personal view, and that is what the sense which I'm getting from social media. The official diplomatic Ministry of External Affairs may try to underplay. I think it's very important that while various other countries and the heads of government were invited, the Prime Minister of Italy was invited, even the President of China was invited. Of course, he chose to send his second in command. The Prime Minister of India, the biggest democracy in the world, and if Prime Minister Modi calls Donald Trump, of course, this is diplomatic parlance, his personal friend, he addresses various heads of government as such. We have been, thinking why Prime Minister Modi did not get this invite. So I think, irrespective of what the reasons were, this is very, to say the least, a kind of a very subtle cold shoulder. What were the reasons? How our diplomatic corps is handling it, I have absolutely no idea. But as a private citizen, our Prime Minister not getting an invite, I mean, he may have gone, not gone, declined, sent someone else. That's a different thing. And of course, the External Affairs Minister was invited and he attended and sitting in the first row. Again, murmurs here that he was there not in his capacity as the External Affairs Minister of India, because the Quad meeting was happening. So, therefore, the other two External Affairs Ministers of Australia and Japan were also accommodated, and India had to be there. But what I think is something which, for me personally, is very, very, I wouldn't like to use the word offensive, but the strong signal which the new administration sent the personal invite, the one day before dinner invites, and you had a person like Gurpatwan Singh Pannu, the self-styled Khalistan ideologue, being there. Now, there is something I cannot digest. Of course, Neeta and Mukesh Ambani were there, but we are told that it is $1 million ticket to buy that. Now, whether Gurpatwan Singh Pannu bought that $1 million ticket, was invited otherwise as a personal friend of Trump, I think sends a very, very wrong signal, especially the context in which it is taking place. You have, indictment of Indian nationals, one person of Gujarati origin already in custody, and one CRPF person who worked with overseas intelligence agencies. He's in India. He has been chucked out of the job. So, and of course, Pannu himself filing a civil suit against top officials, and they're getting summons. So, this is in this scenario to have a person like Pannu in White House on this important occasion sends, to my mind, a very, very strong signal. And I think it'll require a lot of patient diplomacy for the Indian diplomatic corps, the entire finance ministry, and especially the ambassador. And I would say that the previous ambassador, Taranjit Singh Sandhu, who got 1 year extension, of course, in January last, he ultimately joined the BJP, contested from Amritsar Lok Sabha, and he belongs to that place. Could not win, did not win, that's a separate matter. But he was a person who had been organizing the highly successful state visit of Prime Minister Modi when he, in I think June 2022, and the White House effectively rolled down the red carpet, public receptions, so on and so forth. So that is really something we need to work on. We have to mend ties with America, and these subtle signals are very important. And I think we will soon see an improvement, not only as a country which gives us technology, investment both ways, big countries, diaspora, Silicon Valley, name anything, America in their equation, some factor will come in. So this is, to my mind, very important. Of course, as a footnote, if Gautam Adani and his associates have also been indicted by the Department of Justice and in a civil kind of a case by the Security and Exchange Commission, for securities oriented charges or fraud or telegram fraud or whatever. So that, of course, also sours the relations. This is something, the justice system is so robust, you don't expect the White House telling the Attorney General or the Department of Justice, to do or not to do these things. But this is something which needs to be seen. It would be an irritant, and it does have significance, and we would be closely watching as to how the Adani episode, insofar as the indictment in a federal court, twin indictments, I would say, one by the Department of Justice and the other by the Securities and Exchange Commission, which is equivalent of our SEBI, as to how it unfolds. To summarize, I would say that we have a strong foundation with America, and we should allow our diplomatic corps, the foreign service, to handle these things, have bipartisan support within the senators and congressmen, built up the India caucus, and always the inputs of the intelligence agencies, though important, have to be, in my personal opinion, to be placed at a secondary level, and the professional foreign service has to be given precedence. And this is where Prime Minister Modi needs to recalibrate as to how India and he personally is going to engage with America, and especially when you got a president like Donald Trump, who's very hands on and takes decisions which he expects to be implemented and not get stalled in the traditional bureaucracy which all the democracies tend to have. If you're talking in terms of republic, the opposition is an important aspect of it, and Rahul Gandhi re-emerging strongly as the leader of opposition has, of course, not got the type of votes or the type of seats which he would have expected. 99 is still a respectable number. I mean, there was a time when Congress did not have, or no party had, the barest minimum number of MPs in Lok Sabha to even qualify for the post of leader of opposition. Now, that of course is clear that Rahul Gandhi is the leader of opposition, and he's been making noises, I would say, and trying to balance, and especially when it comes to Muslim issues. He may not say it is a Muslim issue, but in terms of Uniform Civil Code, he's speaking. And on the Waqf Act, I've written extensively about it. It is one of the most draconian ways to take away property of non-Muslims and put them into hands of what is supposed to be a charity. But if you ask anyone, ask any Muslim as to whether they have received even a cent or a dime or a one pi of any assistance from any of these Waqf boards, the central Waqf boards or the state boards, they would say that this is a land mafia which is grabbing up properties and then ultimately giving to their cohorts and so on. So I think this does require amendment, and this is one initiative which at least I fully support, having seen at the grassroots level, right from my tenure as subdivisional magistrate, how graveyards being maintained by gram panchayats were usurped by the worker boards because a notification was quietly issued and no one knew where the notification is till it became final within 30 days. So I think that is there, and he is also, Rahul Gandhi is making semi-provocative statements. For instance, he said, we are fighting an unjust, unequal battle with the BJP, with the RSS, fine. And then he said, with the Indian state. Now, what do you mean by Indian state? So are you going to wage war against the state? In the erstwhile IPC, there are only two offenses where mere preparation was an offense. Otherwise, an attempt is an offense. Preparation to commit dacoity and preparing to wage war against the state. So BJP immediately got after Rahul Gandhi, and of course, to say that, are you a traitor? Are you rebelling? Are you rebelling against the Indian state? Of course, there was a counter issue, and I also flagged that in my Twitter post, that you have to read this in the context, if he meant that, of Article 12, which says, what does state mean? It means the governments and all the instrumentalities of the state, boards, corporations, which are effectively under the control. And it is very important because the writ jurisdiction of the Supreme Court lies only against instrumentalities of the state. You can't issue a writ jurisdiction against a private person. Of course, if a private person is being benefited by one of the orders of or notification of an instrumentality of state, he can be arraigned as a respondent. So Rahul Gandhi is trying to make himself relevant, flag issues. Congress also seems to be resurgent, but internal contradictions, the high command culture, although the president of Congress is someone else, everyone is still trying to chummy up to Rahul Gandhi. That remains to be seen. And the Delhi elections, they were part of the India alliance. Even then, in Punjab, Congress and Aam Aadmi Party, they contested separately. The election process in Delhi is very much on. Congress and Aam Aadmi Party are contesting against each other. It's a triangular contest. How it pans out, we would know only when the results are declared on 8th of February, polling being on 5th. So right now we are in the middle of a scenario where both Congress and Aam Aadmi Party are reasserting themselves very seriously in the national capital. Although it is a quasi-state, not a full-fledged state, the LG has a lot of powers, but still being the national capital, the type of media exposure which has, it is very important that this equation is sorted out. I also would be failing in my duty if I do not address the issues of the Supreme Court and the Election Commission. Now, as far as Supreme Court is concerned, I think the most welcome judgment was to scrap the contentious electoral bonds, which were bringing in foreign funds, unknown funds, God knows what, into the election system, even allowing foreign governments to interfere directly because you're funding, and the whole thing was anonymous. So good, it's been put into the rubbish bin of history. But people have been talking about Chief Justice, the former one, Mr. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud. They said, you make different speeches on the weekend, but when you comes to writing a judgment, you're neither here nor there, is somewhere in the middle, like a panchayati judgment. Of course, the man tried his best. He had a longish tenure. He tried to create a legacy. And a couple of weeks before his retirement, when he was set to demit office, he publicly wondered as to what his legacy would be. And he even changed the Lady Justice statue, removed the blindfold, and he said, Justice is no longer blind. And instead of the sword, I'm going to put the Constitution into the hands of the Lady Justice. Of course, I had even then written, while he was in office, an article critical of that to say that sword is the might of the law. So, what do you do if you are not able to enforce the law? So, you lay down the law, interpret the law, and then, of course, you have to implement it. And sword is that might of the power of law. It is not a brute force to be used to slay people and opponents. And as far as constitution is concerned, the entire judicial system has been created by the constitution. So holding the constitution in the hand, to my mind, didn't make sense. The sword was required. As far as blindfold is concerned, justice is blind is an old adage. Justice is blind literally means that you are not concerned as to who's in front of you. And therefore, he said, something you have to see the politics and so on. No, you have to simply see the law and interpret, irrespective of what the public thinks, the political parties think, and so on. So, in any case, it generated a big debate, and that debate is over. The new man is in, and Supreme Court, of course, is an institution. Chief justices have come and gone, but overall, the Chief Justice and the institution of the Chief Justice of India is robust. The institution of the Supreme Court of India and the collegial system is robust. Of course, there are always hiccups, some of the recommendations getting delayed, including appointments and transfers, but that is a part of the game. And ultimately, Supreme Court is the final custodian, and they have watered down provisions of arrest and bail in the Prevention of Money Laundering Act and ED, which was seen as draconian by many. Of course, in the previous years, you had a triple bench upholding the constitutional validity of the PMLA, but overall, now they've said the threshold of arrest is higher, and if there is a departure from procedure, and you can't have a lengthy trial and not frame charges and then expect a person to be inside. So they have gone to the constitutional level under Article 21, but Supreme Court ultimately the custodian of liberty. Of course, there are cases where people still are inside under trials, 4 years, 5 years, under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Those remain contentious issues, legal matters. We would not like to discuss any individual case. The Election Commission of India increasingly under pressure from opposition, from the heyday of session where all political parties were united in saying that he's acting like a ringmaster, to now opposition parties saying that the Election Commission is an extension of the BJP office and so on and so forth. But by and large, they have conducted quite fairly, not because the Election Commission itself may be above reproach, but because the machinery in the districts, led by the district collectors, the district election officer, returning officers, they know what to do. They are the people who ultimately conduct the elections. So all this controversy about EVMs being tampered and so on, I have conducted elections myself. I've been election observer in different states at different times, most recently in 2014 in Raisen, Vidisha in Madhya Pradesh, where Sushma Swaraj was declared elected. Earlier, one has been Madhya in Karnataka, and one has been Jodhpur in Rajasthan. The system, not only of the EVM, but also the way the EVMs are distributed, stored, and counting takes place in presence of the counting agents. I do not personally think that they can be hacked, but if there are certain doubts, I think the election commission would do well to kind of dispel those doubts by having a public demonstration and so on. But election commission definitely under stress, and they can disrupt this. We will have a new chief election commissioner soon. This gentleman is going to hang the shoes after the Delhi elections. Nice person, my batchmate, 84 batch, and let's see how election commission conducts itself. We Second last point which I'd like to make, firstly, that ex-servicemen, including the new Avatar Agniveer, we all pay homage to armed forces, rightly so, and the freedom fighters on the eve of the Independence Day. But mind you, I've worked in the Department of Defense Services, welfare, ex-servicemen welfare. After a Jawan comes, after, at barely an age of 35, and Agniveer 4 years, 3 out of 4 are going to be out. They are getting a hostile environment in their own village. They don't have any other skill except to be perhaps a security guard. And the civil system, they are absolutely not used to how it works. So I think right from the commissioned officers, general level officers, to colonel level officers, short service commission, including women officers coming out, we as a country owe a much, much better deal to our ex servicemen. And it is not just one pension, one rank, which has many ifs, buts, and so on and so forth. But we need to have a far more comprehensive. This is such a valuable resource. You talk to any ex serviceman, even if he or she he's in 80s, you find that they could do so much. So this needs to be channelized not only by giving them opportunities, but also political parties need to, put them to better use. And I think this is something which we collectively need to think. And while talking of ex-servicemen, freedom fighters, of course, it's a dying creed, one would say. But when on 23rd January, hardly 2 days ago, we celebrated the birth anniversary of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, I was surprised to find the raw deal which the members of the Azad Hind Fauj had got. They were cashiered out, they were not taken back. Of course, the trials we know at Red Fort, they were defended and they were let off. Most of them, fought for their pensions and so on and so forth. And only recently, pensions were given. The verification procedure of getting the record of prisoners of war from, Indonesia, from Burma, and so on, it's not an easy thing. But I think those people, very few survivors, would be close to 100 years if there is any needed a better deal. And if we cannot do for the INA volunteers, freedom fighters, at least let us now take into our hands to address the ex servicemen that are in our hands. Last but not the least, we lost a number of luminaries, gems of the Indian Republic who've done India, the Indian Republic proud in a wide variety of spheres, areas of interest coming from all parts of the country. And I think, if I correctly recall and go through the list, it really is a galaxy and a constellation of some of the best citizens, best sons and daughters of India that have been produced. And leading the list can be none other than Dr. Manmohan Singh, leading economist, finance minister, prime minister, wonderful man, passed away, but a great son of India and a great loss to the Indian Republic. Then, of course, you got Ratan Tata, the chairman and chairman emeritus of Tata's Sons, and look at the charities and look at the industries. Great loss. Ustad Zakur Hussain, who can forget his tabla and his Wahataj ad. Then legal luminaries like Feli S. Nariman and the entrepreneur and the cinema icon of Andhra, Ramaji Rao, the die-hard communist Sitaram Yechury, and film director Shyam Benegal, diplomat turned politician Natwar Singh, economist and a great student of Vedic philosophy, Vivek Debroy, chairman of the Prime Minister Economic Advisory Council. I had the privilege of interacting personally with him. They all passed away, and I think while we celebrate the Republic Day, the 76th Republic Day, as India turns 75, it's also time for us to remember these great sons of India who contributed so much in so many spheres at the national and even international level. To conclude, I would say that it is the highest honor in a republic to be a citizen. There is no higher honor than to be a citizen. And a citizen has been reduced by our political system to be a voter. So you vote now, and for 5 years, you have nothing to do. I think we need to capture the center stage. The citizens have to be at the center of the political and the public discourse and not merely voters. So, this is, I think, my message and our pledge to not only be voters but also to be citizens, and everything and anything which impinges upon us, our country, our constitution, our rights, it is our duty to speak and speak, especially for the downtrodden. I cannot say that it doesn't affect me, so what? I don't have a litigation with the Waqf board, so why should I care and bother? I think this is not the right attitude, and people who are educated, people who can think, people who can talk, they must come out in the public space and speak about issues, and some influence, incremental it may be, is bound to come out. So I think we are now maturing as a republic. And while we do so, I cannot but mention that our state of Punjab, we need to pull up our socks. We also need a better deal, whether it's agriculture, the demands of the farmers, whether it's our fiscal position. We all have to work collectively together to make it really the number one state that it was. So, friends, these were the musings that I jotted down and have spoken extempore without any script or teleprompter. And also, I'm going to put this in black and white in terms of my newsletter. And I think before going to sleep, so I'll kind of set it up for dissemination at 2:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time on the Republic Day, covering all these issues. And should you want to receive or be on the mailing list free of cost, please put down your email ID either on Facebook or on YouTube if you've seen this, and I'll be glad to add you to the list so that my articles, as and when published, would be quietly and unobtrusively sent to your inbox. And that list is not made public, it backend works. And therefore, once again, friends, heartiest congratulations and felicitations on the occasion of the eve of the Republic Day. May our republic thrive, not merely survive. And it truly needs to be the Indian century. And if we work together, work collectively, work in unison with each other, I do not think that this is an impossible task. It is a difficult task, but let's do it. So thank you very much for joining. Jai Bharat, Jai Hind.